So good to be here with you this morning. You feeling well? Feeling happy? All right. Hopefully by the end of the service, there'll be more than 3 of you. I'm kidding. I'm just letting you warm up. Is everyone feeling okay? Good? Yeah? Well, there we go. Have we got any adventurers in the room? Any adventurers? Wow. Okay, Yeah, not the kids' room, sorry. Let me clarify. Does anyone love exploring new places? Any travelers? Yeah? Esther and I, we love to travel. Esther's my wife, if I haven't had the privilege of meeting you. Esther and I love to travel. We love to visit new countries, experience different cultures, and anytime we get the privilege of picking a new travel destination, there are 2 major factors that influence our choices. Weather and food. Yeah? Is anyone with me? Weather and food. The sun has got to be shining, and the cuisine has got to be exquisite. And once we've locked in our destination, we start planning, and obviously when I say we, I mean we start planning. We plan what we want to do there. Most importantly, we plan where we're going to eat. We even plan when we're going to relax, because we want to make the most of our time. Is anyone else like that, or is it just us who make holidays intense? We want to make the most of our time. And a few years ago, we got to spend a couple of intense days in the city of Rome. And let me tell you, we made the most of our time. We planned it, and we did it. We saw the Colosseum, the Forum, Paul's Prison, the Pantheon, the Trevi Fountain. If it was on TripAdvisor's to-do list, we did it. And we walked until we couldn't feel our feet. But if I'm honest, the sights, the history, as incredible as it was, that wasn't even the highlight for us. The thing we still talk about to this day is the food. Yeah, the sights were unforgettable, but the food was incredible. Mamma mia. I've been told that that's like, I overuse that with Franz. He's actually Italian, but mamma mia. We quickly realized that we needed to rework our jam-packed itinerary to do less sightseeing and more food eating. And earlier this year, we found out that the EuroLead Core Teams Conference was going to be in Rome, and we were so excited, we decided we were going to go early for an extra few days. Phil and Helena agreed to join us. Carl tagged along in the end as well, and 3 glorious days of racing through this beautiful, historic city with our friends, indulging in incredible food. And this time we knew all of the great spots. Like, what could possibly go wrong? This time we brought kids. And for those of you who aren't laughing, you don't understand why this changes everything. Because let me tell you, you can have a perfectly laid out itinerary, but when it comes to traveling with your children, your plans will get disrupted. Let's just say there was no racing involved this time. Nappy changes, toilet breaks, playing in fountains, nap time, chasing pigeons, nappy changes. With every disruption and delay, I watched our precious eating time waste away. And if you think I'm being dramatic, you've not tasted Roman pasta, pizza romana, gelato, tiramisu. It's not easy dealing with delays when tiramisu is on the line, my friends. And I'm joking. No, I'm not. But you get it, right? It's frustrating when all of a sudden your plans get disrupted. It's annoying when you can't get to where you wanted to go for reasons outside of your control. And the truth is, there have been moments in my life where I've had to deal with real delays over things that matter far more than tiramisu. Delays that have caused me to doubt. Disruptions that have shaken my convictions. There have been times in my life where I've been believing for things of real significance, healing, provision, relief, for all kinds of miracles, maybe for myself or for my loved ones, only to be left waiting or even wondering if anything was ever going to happen. And I've had moments where I was convinced that God was going to come through for me, only to be left confused as to where he was in my moment of need. I know I'm not the only one who's ever felt like that. I'm sure many of you in this room can resonate. We've all been there, right? Waiting for something significant to come to pass. There are those in this room right now who are desperately waiting. Perhaps you're waiting for direction, for clarity, for God to show you your next step, to reveal your purpose to you. Maybe you're waiting for provision, believing for financial relief, a job, a house, an open door. Maybe you're waiting for restoration, for a relationship to be restored, for a prodigal son or daughter to come back home. Maybe you're waiting for healing, for yourself, for a loved one. You're praying for a miracle that still hasn't materialized yet. And I wonder if there's anyone here who's given up praying for a miracle because they felt like God was taking too long. You pray, but your situation doesn't change. You see others get their breakthrough while you're still waiting. And it's the waiting that's hard, right? Especially when things seem to get worse before they get better. It's painful, it's frustrating, it's confusing sometimes. And doubt and fear start to creep in, and we wonder if God has forgotten about us altogether. And I just want to pause here and take a moment to say that if you're here this morning and you don't believe what I believe, or perhaps you're still exploring this faith thing, figuring out who Jesus is to you, I just want to say that I'm glad you're here with us. And I want to tell you that I believe that God loves you too. I believe that he wants to work all things together for the good of you as well. He wants to move in your life too. But I also know that even as I say that, some of you struggle to believe what I've just said. In fact, right now in this moment, you're wrestling with that feeling that God has let you down. And perhaps you've begun to drift away from God as a result because he's not coming through for you in your darkest hour. If that's you, I want to say thank you for being here. And I also want to encourage you to keep listening today. Because even when we give up on God, God never gives up on us. But the question is, what is it that we do in the waiting? When we're believing but not yet seeing, when we're praying but not yet receiving, when we're trying to walk in faith but we feel like we're not going anywhere, when we're desperate and yet all we seem to get are delays. What do we do in the waiting? How do we respond? How do we trust that God is still at work? What do we do when we don't feel like he is? How do we keep going when the waiting seems endless? And what if we've been waiting for so long that any hope that we once had is now dead and gone? Well, this morning we're going to look at an account found in the Gospels. And I believe it has a lot to teach us about what it means to wait for a miracle. And the account follows the journey of a man whose life has just been turned upside down. And we're going to read from Luke chapter 8. It's going to be on the screen behind me. If you've got something you want to take notes on, maybe jot this down. Luke chapter 8. We're going to start from verse 40. And it says this: Now when Jesus returned, a crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Then a man named Jairus, a synagogue leader, came and fell at the feet of Jesus, pleading for him to come to his house, because his only daughter, a girl of about 12, was dying. And there's more to this passage we're going to read on in a moment, but I just want to pause here and say that I can't imagine the pain that Jairus was going through in this moment. His daughter was dying. His only daughter was on death's door and he was about to lose her. Can you imagine having to make the decision to leave the side of your dying child in search of the impossible? Can you imagine what emotions might have been going through his head? Fear, doubt, despair, desperation. Or perhaps he had heard that, just like all of those others in the crowd, that maybe Jesus could perform the very miracle that he needed, that his daughter needed. And so here we read that with all of the strength that he could muster, Jairus brought his despair to the feet of Jesus. And Mark writes about this moment in his gospel like this. He says, when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet and he pleaded earnestly with him. My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live. It's so easy in those moments, isn't it? In those moments of desperation to give up on hope, to begin blaming, to succumb to fear, to feel helpless. But here we read Jairus, in the midst of his desperation, refused to concede defeat. Instead, he came looking for Jesus. And friends, I want to encourage you this morning that your situation may seem desperate, it may seem bleak, it may seem hopeless, and there may not be anything that you can do, but it's okay because there is nothing that our God cannot do. And with Jesus, there is always hope. When Jairus was in need of a miracle, he came looking for Jesus. Let's continue. Verse 41, as Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, and no one could heal her. And she came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. Who touched me? Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you. But Jesus said, someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me. Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. And in the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. That's incredible, isn't it? And I so often read this part and rejoice with this woman's story. It's a joyous account. It's a miraculous moment. It's a testament to the power of faith. This woman didn't lose hope. She didn't give up. Her faith and her perseverance paved the way for her miracle. And you can't help but feel good for her, right? But when you read this passage again through the eyes of a desperate father who's waiting for a miracle, it takes on a whole different feeling. Here is a man whose time is running out. He's desperate for Jesus to heal his dying daughter, and already they're having to fight their way through the crowds. It says that the crowds were crushing, pressing against them. And in the midst of all of that, Jesus stops. And Jairus' anxiety must have been through the roof. Jesus, we've got to keep going. What are you doing? My daughter is about to die. Why are you wasting time? We need to get to where we're going. For Jairus, this probably wasn't a joyful moment, and I can't even begin to contemplate trying to celebrate someone else's miracle when he was still waiting for his. And it's so often when we need God to move in our lives that we begin to take notice of what God is doing for others, and how he has healed others, and how he has brought them through financial difficulty and restored their relationships and provided them opportunities and given them peace in turmoil. And sometimes it seems that only other people get an overflow of God's blessing in their lives while our lives remain dry and lifeless. And when we look at other people's situations, it's so easy to start questioning God. Why aren't you doing that for me? Have I not been faithful? Have I not consistently given? Have I not consistently tithed? Have I not continued to serve you? Have I not been good to my family and friends? Have I not been a friend to those in need? Have I not? You see, Jairus, we read earlier, was the leader of a synagogue. Arguably a good man. He most likely obeyed God's law to the T. And if I was Jairus, this is probably what I would have been thinking. Jairus would have had every right to question these things of God if that's how God worked. We try and qualify ourselves for God's provision, but it's not by works that we are healed, restored, or set free. It is through grace. Grace that God has already provided for us through Jesus' death and resurrection. There is nothing that we can do to make God love us any more or any less than he already does. And yet so many of us still think that if God really loved us, then he would submit to our time frame. We don't want to wait. We want God to move now. We want him to fix it now. We want him to bring healing now. And in our desperation and our pain, we begin to doubt that God knows what he's actually doing. And each delay can bring more doubt until we fear that we'll never see our miracle come to pass. And it's in this waiting that Jairus receives the devastating news that confirms his worst fears. In verse 49, we read this. Whilst Jesus was still speaking, someone came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. Your daughter is dead. Your daughter is dead, he said. Don't bother the teacher anymore. Your daughter is dead. Your hope is dead. Your situation is dead. What was it all for? What's the point of hoping and believing and waiting? Was it all for nothing? I wonder if you've ever had one of those moments when you've begun to question and think like that. Maybe you've had one of those moments when you've had the rug pulled from underneath you. In a few short moments, with a few haunting words, you feel the last bit of hope begin to drain from your body. And in that moment, Jairus' world fell apart. Dead. Your daughter is dead. But we continue in verse 50. It says, hearing this, Jesus said to Jairus, don't be afraid, just believe, and she will be healed. And when he arrived at the house of Jairus, He did not let anyone go in with him except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. Meanwhile, all the people were wailing and mourning for her. "Stop wailing," Jesus said. "She is not dead, but asleep." And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But he took her by the hand and said, "My child, get up." Her spirit returned, and at once she stood up. Then Jesus told them to give her something to eat. Her parents were astonished, but he ordered them not to tell anyone what had happened. Don't be afraid, just believe, and she will be healed. In the darkest moment when all hope was lost, the miracle worker performed the miraculous. Jesus gave life to what was dead. He did it then, and he can do it again. And we've got to understand something here, church. God's timing is better than ours. It might be today, but it also might not be. Just because you don't see immediate change doesn't mean that God isn't working. And we need to understand that a miracle delayed is not a miracle denied. So if you're in your darkest moment right now, don't give up. If you feel like all hope and belief is draining from your body, keep going. If you feel like falling to your knees in fear, keep fighting to keep your faith. When waiting becomes unbearable, when all seems dead and gone, hold on to hope, because he is a miracle worker. He keeps his promises. He makes a way where there is no way. He parts seas and calms storms. When he speaks, dead things come to life. A miracle delayed does not mean a miracle denied. Don't miss out on the greater miracle that's still on its way. What you thought was the end was just another step in your journey. Don't be afraid, just believe, because your miracle could already be in motion. But how do we do that? Sam, it's all good and well getting excited about all of that, but how do we do that? How do we not be afraid and just believe? It sounds so easy, but is it? What are we supposed to do when we're in the middle of a miracle in motion? What do we do when we're still waiting? How do we navigate disruptions and delays? How do we cope when our circumstances are telling us that it's all over? How do we maintain that faith like Jairus no matter what? Well, I've got 3 things for you today, and the first is this. When you're waiting on a miracle, you've got to keep walking with Jesus. When you're waiting on a miracle, keep walking with Jesus. You see, Jairus stayed with Jesus. He endured the disruptions and the crowds with Jesus. He received the devastating news when he was with Jesus. When all hope was lost, he continued with Jesus. Whilst he was waiting for a miracle, Jairus kept walking with Jesus. Friends, when we're waiting for a miracle, it's not about being idle. It's not about sitting still and doing nothing. You see, waiting isn't passive. Waiting isn't static. Waiting is active trust. In Isaiah 40, verse 31, it says, "But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not be faint." And the word wait here is translated from a Hebrew word that carries a deeper meaning than simply passing time. It means this. There's 2 meanings here. The first is to eagerly hope for, expect, or long for with anticipation. This conveys this idea of trusting and confidently expecting God to act. And the second meaning is to bind together like strands of a rope twisted tightly, suggesting an active intertwining of one's heart and soul with God, relying on his strength rather than our own. And see, whilst we're waiting for a miracle, we've got to keep walking with Jesus. Keep seeking him in every moment. Allow him to provide the strength that we need exactly when we need it. Rather than passively waiting for God to move, we've got to keep walking step by step with an active, faith-filled expectation. We've got to keep walking with Jesus. But what does that mean practically? Well, really simply, it means to keep showing up, to keep praying, to keep worshiping, to keep trusting. When life feels heavy, the last place that you might want to be is in church, surrounded by other people. But can I encourage you, this is exactly where you need to be. Keep showing up because God meets us where we are, even in our darkest moments. Keep praying. Let prayer be your first response and not your last resort. Bring him your fears, your hopes, your doubts. He hears you even when you don't have the words to say. Proclaimers, prayer is the most productive thing that we can do as Christians. Keep praying. Keep worshiping. You see, worship shifts our focus from our circumstances and places it on Jesus. Whatever comes our way, we need to fix our eyes on Jesus, exactly as Franz was saying this morning. When chaos is raging in our life, we need to fix our eyes on Jesus. When we're in the middle of a storm, we need to fix our eyes on Jesus. And through it all, keep trusting. See, Jairus didn't walk away when things got worse. He stayed closer to Jesus, even in the delay. And because he stayed, he saw the miracle. And I wonder how many miracles we're waiting for are closer than we think. Waiting on a miracle looks like walking with Jesus. It also looks like this. Number 2, it also looks like taking stock of who is in your house. Who is in your house? In verse 51, we read, when he arrived at the house of Jairus, he did not let anyone go in with him except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. Notice how particular Jesus was about which people could stay. Peter, James, John, the parents, the girl's parents. Everyone else had to go. Why? Because who you allow in your house matters. When you're waiting, when you're believing for a miracle, who is speaking into your life? Which are the voices that you're listening to? Are they voices from people of hope, or are they people of despair? Are they people who lift you up, or are they people who bring you down? Are they filled with faith, or are they marred with cynicism? We need people who will pray with us, who will stand with us, who will rejoice with us, who will weep with us, and through it all, who will remind us that God is still at work, that God is still in control. Who is in your house? Maybe today we need to take stock of the voices in our lives. And maybe you also need to ask yourself, who can I be that person for? If you want a faith-filled community around you, be a person who builds faith in others. The team can come up. Be a person of faith who builds faith in others. And practically, if you don't know what to do with that, can I encourage you to surround yourself with a community of faith? And perhaps the next step, the simple next step for you, is to get yourself planted at Proclaimers by signing up to serve or registering in a connect group. Surround yourself with people of faith who will stand with you in your moment of desperation. Who is in your house? And whilst we're waiting on a miracle, we've got to keep walking with Jesus. We've got to surround ourselves with the right people. And finally, we've got to believe for the impossible. I want to challenge you this morning. When was the last time you believed for something so audacious that you were greeted with ridicule? When was the last time you believed for something so bold and so out there that people laughed at you? In the Amplified Version, from verse 53, it says, "Then they began laughing scornfully at him and ridiculing him, knowing without any doubt that she was dead. But Jesus took her by the hand and spoke, saying, 'Child, arise.' And her spirit returned, and she got up immediately, and he ordered that she be given something to eat." Very practical, Jesus. And her parents were greatly astonished by the miracle. They were the ones who came to Jesus in the first place, and yet they are greatly astonished by what Jesus can do. He can do far exceedingly more than we could ever believe, ask for, imagine. When was the last time you believed for the impossible? Just believe. Jairus came to Jesus believing for a healing. He wasn't expecting his daughter to die. But even after all hope was gone, when everything was lost, Jesus turns to him and says, "Don't be afraid, just believe." Just believe. After hearing the worst news of his life. But here's the thing. That's what faith looks like. Faith is trusting Jesus when logic says all is lost. It's not about ignoring reality, but it's about taking a step of obedience even when we can't see the ending. See, faith isn't the absence of mental doubt, nor is it a matter of an emotional high. Faith is a conviction of the heart to trust the word of God, that God is who he says he is. The same yesterday, today, and forever. He is the same miracle worker that extended hope to Jairus as he is today. He is the same waymaker that he was back then as he is today. He still keeps his promises like he did back then, today. God is still working even when we can't see it. He is still in control even when the storm around us rages. He is still moving when our situation seems lifeless. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Here's the thing, God performs the miracle, but it's our faith that prepares the way. We've got a part to play, church. We need to seek Jesus and ask him for a miracle. We need to walk with Jesus, taking steps of obedience, even when it seems impossible. And we need to believe for the impossible. We need to believe for the impossible. Stir the faith in our heart. This morning, have you stopped believing for the impossible? Have you given up praying for the miraculous? If you're honest with yourself, has your faith fallen flat? I've got some good news for you this morning. We serve a God who raises the dead, a God who can speak to every situation, the very situation that you thought was dead, and say, get up, come alive, and it will rise. It will come alive, even in the worst of situations. What if your delay isn't a no, but a not yet? What if your miracle is already in motion, even if you can't see it, even if you can't feel it, even when the delay feels unbearable? Let me tell you, he is there in the delay, walking with you every step. He is our comfort. He is our strength. He is our hope. He is our refuge. He is the only one who can make a way where there is no other way. And it's so often through our stories that God shows the world his glory, and our lives become a testament to his love. The very thing that you thought would defeat you, the very thing that you thought would crush you, the very thing that you thought would end you, God can turn around and use for good. So don't give up. Keep waiting. Don't give up. Keep walking. Don't give up. Keep believing. Don't give up. Keep stirring your faith. Keep fixing your eyes on Jesus, because he can make a way where there is no other way. A miracle delayed is not a miracle denied. In fact, your miracle could be in motion even this morning. Would you stand to your feet? I'd love to pray for us. Father, we come before you this morning, coming from different backgrounds, different journeys, different situations, different circumstances, different moments in our life. God, whatever it is that we're believing for this morning, whatever it is that your people are believing for this morning, we choose to come before you with faith. We choose to come before you as an act of obedience, to bring it at your feet, to fall at your feet. And God, this morning we plead that you would work the miraculous, that you would make a way where everyone else has said that it's impossible, when every other voice is saying, give up, move on. God, would you make a way? This morning, Father, I just want to pray for those in the room who feel like their faith is faltering. Their hope is wavering. Their excitement, their anticipation has faded away. God, would you stir in them afresh new faith, new hope, new belief that you can raise situations that are dead. When you speak, anything can come alive.